Hello, welcome to AI in Action. My name is Maurie, and I'm here with my husband Jim, and we are very excited that we have our dear friend Amy Mayer with us today. Yes, so Amy is the CEO and founder of FriEdTech, which is based out of Houston. She does like professional development, all sorts of professional development all over the United States. She also has this great book. I'm going to hold it up here, right? Beyond Worksheets. There it is, Beyond Worksheets. It's awesome. I mean, the back when I first started reading it, schooling is dead. Long live schooling. It's a really good read. I enjoyed it a whole bunch. I'm gonna have to get you to autograph it. I mean, we're like friends and everything. And look, it's not an
This
autograph
is empty.
copy.
I'm so sorry,
What is
Maury.
wrong with that
Man.
picture right there? It's
Ouch.
I
not
can
an
fix
Ouch.
autograph.
that. Half
Ouch.
Sharpie can travel.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds good. So you're a very good friend of ours. Also, you are a like sometimes PD partner with us about artificial intelligence, and we have been talking a lot about AI, of course, because when I'm like, I can't talk about AI anymore with
Like when you're
Jim.
sleeping.
And it's like right up here, when I'm up to here with the AI conversation, I'm like, hey Jim, have you talked to Amy lately?
You know, she
Let's
really
talk
does.
about that.
She really does that too. She'll go, you haven't talked to Amy lately, have you? And now that she says that, I didn't realize that was a trend. I was just
Yeah.
thinking she was worried about Amy. Now it's to get rid of me. I see how
I
this works.
Maybe it's dual purpose, Jim. You don't
Well,
know.
Yeah, I
it's
know what the
dual
purpose
purpose,
is.
but I promise you that I know that Amy can take care of herself. So it is a little more of a Maury might need a break. So I'm going to see how Amy's doing.
Amy gets up
Well,
early too,
you know what? Yes, that's right. We get up really early. And
so I
I
can
learned
text.
so much from you, Jim. I really do, even though you scare me sometimes. And I went and watched the latest video you told me about. And to the extent that I understood it, it was terrifying. So, yeah,
Yeah.
thanks for that. More
I try to
nightmares.
I try not to go too dark too often. I try to bring it back toward the light occasionally, but sometimes you got to go dark.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, to truly understand it.
sometimes it is dark.
It is.
Yeah, it is very scary. So we have some questions. So this is kind of strange for us because we do just tend to have like general conversations with you whenever we're talking. But I decided to try to keep us on track since this is actually the podcast.
Good luck,
It'll
Maury.
Good
luck.
luck. I know. So we're going to focus on K-12 education. So my first question that I have is, where do you see AI currently being used most effectively in K-12 education?
Well, I saw an incredible use of it last week and I'm so excited about it. And it's why I emailed y'all and said, hey, can I be on your podcast sometime because I want to talk about this because I really did get super excited about it. So I worked with about 60 people from 4 or 5 school districts in Waxahachie last week. And it was such a great experience. The willingness that they had to learn, the excitement that they had about the topic was just got me excited. So one of the things that we did is we worked on creating what we're calling the uncheatable assignment. So I'm going to screen share with you for a second.
Okay.
So I worked on this prompt for them. So one of the things that I wanted to teach them was, of course, I wanted them to know how to do better prompting because, like you guys know very well, if you don't get good at this, AI just, I mean, I've seen a lot of people sit down at it and try it and they're like, I don't really get why you think this is so great. But when I watch them interacting with it, they're interacting with it like it's a Google search. And we all know that's not the way you interact with it. It's a completely different type of tool, and that's just not going to be effective. So this prompt is super long. It's based on our create, which you guys created, and then we worked together to make it, to format it and make it into a word and all that kind of stuff. But it's your prompting guide. And I, as you can see, left some yellow spaces here where I had them fill in the blanks. Referred to, have you guys been seeing this and using this FERS
Yes.
assessment scale? Yeah, that's
Yes.
good stuff. Reminds me a lot of Lubbock ISD's assignment protocol, which I really like too. So one of the things that we did was we made an uncheatable assignment. So we all know like there's not really an assignment that AI can't do, but we can make it both less we can make students less likely to want to cheat at the same time as we make the assignment higher level and just less cheatable in general. So, and I felt like I was kind of doing the same thing. So I felt like it was kind of meta because when I asked the teachers to create this uncheatable assignment, I didn't stop there. I did what I've read we should be doing now, and I took it another level. I said, you're going to create the lesson, but your assignment is to convince your reluctant administrator that this lesson is better with students using AI than without students using AI. So that's the next level you have to take it to. So it was really interesting watching them work. I had also earlier in the day, and I don't know if I've shown you guys this yet, but I want to pull it up. So I think I told you, Maury, about the acceptable or not assignment I got from Carrie Fulgham in Lubbock ISD,
Yes, I
also
believe
in
you did.
Lubbock.
I believe you did. Yes.
It's really cool, and I've used this with a couple of different groups now, and I added another pivot to it last week. And I was able to use this with this aspect too. So I gave them these persona cards, and some of them, about a third of the group, had a persona card, and that's who they had to respond as to the acceptable or not assignment. So they walk around the room, they read the scenarios, and then about a third of them are using one of these personas to answer. So the person that they are presenting to at the end of the day is this old school leader. So they're embodying, they're imagining this person's reaction to this lesson that they're creating. And without AI, I would have needed, without them being able to use AI to create their uncheatable assignments, that would have been the entire day. Like
Mm-hmm.
if we had them just use their own brains. But
Mm-hmm.
with the prompting guide, and so in the morning, we just kind of worked on what is this technology? Why does it matter? Why do we have to change school? All that kind of stuff. And we did the acceptable or not. And then in the afternoon, they only had about 2.5 hours, and they made an entire, not just one lesson, but like a unit plan. So
Wow.
3 days to 3 weeks was the time span that I saw presented. And they also, not only did they make the unit plan, they made a presentation to give to the old school leader to convince that old school leader that this way of students using AI was of value. So could not have done that. So I went around to each of the groups. We had about, I don't know, 7 or 8 groups of teachers working together. And I went around as they were kind of completing the lesson idea part of the assignment. And I asked them, how much time did AI save you in this process? And the best answer I got was one teacher who said, I don't know, because I never would have even tried this without
Right.
AI.
I hear that a
Right?
lot. Yeah.
Right?
I hear that a lot.
You
That
know, we
was
I
used to
such a
talk
do.
great
about
answer.
eureka moments where we had somebody that would literally stand up and say, "Oh my God, this would have taken me like
Right.
3 days to do."
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Almost the very first tra- professional development that we did at our high school couple of years ago, we actually had a teacher stand up and say that, and we're like, "That's cool." You know, it makes
Yeah.
you feel good, like so you
I feel
connected
like
with
I
somebody.
might have been there. Don't you think that was in what district was that?
Well,
That's
we
the
went
Uh,
first
to
time I saw y'all
Stephenville.
present.
We went
Stephenville,
to
wasn't it?
that
Stephenville.
it
Yeah.
happened in Stephenville too. Yeah, that
Yeah.
was
I recorded that. That teacher
yes,
started talking, and I said, "Hey, hold on a minute." I got out my phone, and I actually
yes, you
have a
did.
recording of her saying
Yeah.
that, and
You
she was
drove all the way
really
from
bowled over.
Houston. You drove all the way from
Yes.
Houston. You were exhausted, and then you had to drive all the way back to Houston
Yeah,
after we're done. I remember that. That was a fun.
that's
That was
right.
actually fun. That was a good day.
It
So
was.
that is a very effective way of using artificial intelligence, K-12.
Right. It's
Yeah.
it's so ironic because it's like
Mm-hmm.
we have to make our assignments better, and we didn't have a way to do that before.
Right.
But the reason why we have to do it is also the way that we can fix it. So
You know,
it's
that's a.
really ironic.
It's also
Right.
kind of nice too if you're going to make a if technology generally makes problems, but it
Right.
doesn't tend to give
It
you
generally does
solutions to
not
them.
solve the same problems
It
that
does
it's
not.
making.
It,
Yeah.
it creates a whole new set that you have to figure out how to solve. This one actually gives you a little bit of help. So
Which
Right.
kind of leads into the next question, which is a misconception, right? So,
Okay.
Jim, you just addressed a misconception right there that a lot of people think that anytime you get a new technology, that you're just adding a new problem. and that the technology is not going to be what's going to actually help you solve the problem. You're actually going to have to be like learning how to do it and learning how to log in and learning how to read the information that you're getting from it. And, so now I'm going to pose that question to Amy. Is there a misconception that you're seeing out there that people are having concerning artificial intelligence that you're thinking, it is a misconception? How can you change that perception of AI? What would it be? What misconception do you think is out there?
It's a great question and an interesting one. And there's two main ones that I've encountered. The first one is that this is kind of a crappy Google search. And people just don't get it. They're like, it's just not giving me the information I want. And it's because they're talking to it like it's a search engine. And the other one is that you need some specialized knowledge in order to try it. And the knowledge that you need will grow on its own. All you have to do is start interacting with the tool, and you will, just like we learned, we most of us learned to Google search this way too. We got better at it because we noticed things about the results we were getting. We started to internalize when we were getting better results and why those results were better. And then, maybe we went to a session that told us about Boolean search terms or whatever, and we might have gotten a lot better in just an hour by doing something like that. But this technology is the first one that uses natural language like that. That's literally the whole point of the technology. And so people a lot of times are like, I'm not a technology person. I'm not doing that. And it's like, oh, if you're not a technology person, you absolutely have to do this. This is going to be your first time to be successful using a computer, maybe ever. So
right.
This time is for you. Like, if you've been waiting for it to get smart enough for you to just talk to it, that's what just happened. So those are the two big things.
That kind of leads into the next question that I have
Hold
on the
on.
list.
They've got a term they're using now in the programming world.
Okay, what is it?
Vibe coding. And it kind of applies in general. It was coined by, I can't remember the guy's name, but it was coined by somebody, I think he's an Anthropic. But basically, if you're a coder, you just kind of sit down and you open, these are AI agents that they're using, but you open your AI agent. In my case, I use one called Klein, and you don't have a fully fleshed out plan as to what you want the code to look like. You just start talking to the AI and it starts writing code, the agent does. And then as it writes code and it helps you test the code, you make improvements. But it's a whole iterative process.
Is this like Replit? Did you listen to that video I sent you last week?
Replit is, yes. And the guy that started Replit is definitely understand. It's anytime you do agentic coding, you do that.
Sorry.
What is Replit?
That's that IDE that, remember, we used in that class that Jared and I came up with for computer programming?
Okay.
It's an online coding
what we always
tool.
called it.
We called it
always
Repellent.
pronounced it Repellent. Okay.
I
was like,
think
is there a new
Replit
one out there?
He
in
does.
the video.
He pronounces it Replit.
Well,
but
either
way,
Talto, Hutto, Hutto.
Potato.
Exactly. But I guess you could say that vibe coding, it's kind of the same idea. That's what I started doing with AI from day one. And I did just like you said, I started treating it originally like Google. And over time, I iteratively got better as I noticed the different things I could do.
Right.
So it's a weird term, but it kind of applies to AI in general, not just coding. And
it's you're vibing. You're vibing with
AI.
It.
That's exactly the point. You're vibing with your AI.
Right. So that brings us to question 3, which was...
She really is going to keep us on track, Jim.
She's trying. Well, normally you and I are incapable of staying on track, so she's trying really hard. She's going to see if she can do it.
I believe in you.
And what are y'all doing to me right now? Huh?
Getting off track. Getting off track, so we always do.
We led into the next question, which was, what are the skills? And Amy just covered it. You don't need any really specialized essential skills. But you made a comment about the Boolean stuff. I remember when I was teaching technology, we actually had a whole section that we would start teaching about how to properly search with search engines.
Yeah, the quotation marks.
Right. Yeah. And so that needs to happen in K-12 education. Yes. I mean, AI literacy, how to use it, how to prompt it, what to use it for, that has to happen in K-12. So there's my little plug.
It does. It's not that there's no work to be done here. There's a ton of work to be done here. Right. It's just different kind of work. It's more about understanding. It's in my opinion, the biggest thing we have to do inside education is we have to understand why our assignments have to change. Do you mind if I show you something real quick?
Go for it.
Are you going to show us vibe coding?
No,
No,
she's
I'm
gonna
not.
skip
That's
to
your job.
question. She's gonna skip to question number, like, I don't know, 7 or 8. That's what she's
Got to
gonna
get
do.
out of order.
She's gonna
It's
get me
tradition.
out of order.
It's
Mari's
tradition.
she's gonna let me. I see it
I am.
happening right now.
I love her so much. She can do whatever the heck she
Thank you,
wants.
Maury. I feel the love right now. So this is why. So I've spent like a ton of time thinking about this, and then I saw Scott McCloud, who is one of my book endorsers, who I just love. I vibe with him on
There you go.
education
There
stuff.
you go. It's all a
Came
vibing
out with
thing.
something that's prettier than mine, but is based almost exactly the same thing. And I know he hasn't seen me do this speech. He's never seen this, and I had never seen his. So, but it kind of made me feel better about it. If Scott thinks this is the truth too, then we're on the same page. So the reason why the PD has to be done is because every single educator, and I don't just mean teachers, every educator has got to internalize why the assignments have to change versus any other part of the process. Okay. So this is how the cycle is working right now. This is what's going on in schools. And I've gotten a chance to talk to several superintendent groups, a lot of teachers, and nobody has told me you're wrong about that. That's not what's going on. No one. So the teacher's assigning the work, and it's this old-fashioned work. It's the same work they were assigning before because they're they're stressed and overwhelmed. They have a lot of other stuff to do. They haven't been to any professional development. They're just like, I'm just going to pretend this doesn't exist for like 6 more months because I can't right now. But so this is what's happening. They're assigning the work. Students are using generative AI to complete it. Between 74 and 86% of students are the last estimates I saw of the percentage of students who are using AI to complete their work. I think it's higher than that, but
It is higher. I guarantee you it's higher than that.
They don't self-report. They don't
right.
self-report.
And you guys know the more advanced the student is, the more advanced the class is that the student finds themselves in, actually the more likely they are to be using this. So the more grade interested in grades a student is, the more likely they are to be using generative AI. So that's opposite. Most of the time it's not our highest level students who are plagiarizing, because they understand how easy that kind of cheating is to catch, and they wouldn't want to put themselves in jeopardy that way. This technology is different, so they're definitely using generative AI to do their work. The teacher is using it to grade the work or give feedback to the work. And I always try to remember to say this: I'm not opposed to this. Teachers need all the help they can get, but we are going to have to spend enough time looking at the work to know whether the student did it and to understand whether they're learning or not. So the cycle could partially be broken right here, but it's not getting broken right here right now. So what's happening is, for whatever reason, the teacher believes the student learned. Maybe they used AI really well and it's not really detectable. They did a little bit of prompt engineering. They're not an English language learner, because we know that those plagiarism checkers are not doing a great job with English language learners. Whatever reason, the teacher believes the student learned. But then at some point, there's some kind of an assessment that's independent. The student can't access the tools that they've been using. And that's when we find out that the student didn't learn. And the administrators I'm talking to want to break the cycle right here. They want to say, you plagiarized, you didn't do this work, you're in trouble now. That's how we want to deal with it, because that's how we dealt with the old form of cheating. But there's several problems with that. One is plagiarism checkers don't work well. The false positives are like through the roof, as you guys well know.
Yep.
And if you haven't listened to their copy leaks episode, you got to go listen to that if this is an issue that concerns you, because that's a real in-depth look at how those tools work, why the traditional tools don't work, and what can be done. But still, it's not a good solution, because look what's happened. We've been all the way through the learning cycle. We used up all the time we had to do the learning. And then we're going to bust them after the end. If we're not the cops, we can't wait and for somebody to mess up and then slap the handcuffs on and take them to jail. We have to fix the cycle here at the assignment. We have to make it uncheatable. And if we don't do that, we're just not doing our jobs as educators. I can't even remember what you asked me anymore, but I had to say that.
Yeah, there's a danger I'm about to get us off track again too, so I better let Maury ask the next question.
No, you guys are fine. You're fine, because okay, so
well,
We
the
were
thing
about to
is
ask
that
about traditional assessments, and that's what you
that's
just talked about. You can no longer do a
No.
traditional assessment.
well, the thing that I was going to, we've got the pilot that we've had going for quite some time at the school. And some of the objections that I hear from administrators at our school district about using AI is there is an expectation that doesn't appear to be going away. The kids are going to pass standardized tests. And when you start changing, to me, it's like a pipeline. And the pipeline, it's similar to your circle, but I think of it like a pipeline. But part of that pipeline is at the end of the pipeline, right before you exit it, you have to take this standardized test. And the standardized test has particular expectations pretty much that you taught it a somewhat traditional way to get there.
Right.
And I'm not sure that you can fix up here without breaking everything. How do you get it to the point where when you get to that standardized test, they can go, okay, I know we've been using Gen AI. I know we've done project-based learning. I know we've done all these great things to
But get
better
back in the
utilize it.
box now.
Yeah,
Now I need
right.
you to start
Get right back down in the
get right back in the box.
box.
How do you
Yeah.
fix that?
Yeah.
Well,
I mean,
That's
we
my
just
question. How do you
did
fix that?
we just did STAR testing. Of course, everybody in the state of Texas did, but I walked into our office area and I could see directly into like the community room where they were having kids take STAR testing. And it was just like, oh my goodness, these kids are at these little desks. They've got their computer in front of them. 50% of them had their heads down. The other ones, and they were just
They're not engaged.
they're
languishing.
so dejected looking, sitting there for 4 hours,
Oh,
taking
it's
this.
so miserable.
It's,
Oh my God.
it is painful to look at them. It really is.
Now,
It
try
And
really
doing that.
is.
Try doing that when you're ADHD and you can't sit still for 15 minutes, which is the reason I've always been terrible at testing. If I was in high school today, I don't think I could pass. And because I don't think these tests are so long. I mean, if I took a test over 45 minutes long, I was climbing the walls.
Well, and what is the point in it? Like, I don't know. You ask a question, and I think it's a really good question. And we talk about this all the time, and I think we feel exactly the same way. I fear that what will happen is that we're going to have private schools and probably largely ineffective charter schools are going to take over the landscape because even though charter schools are subject to whatever state standardized assessment there is, in my experience, they don't seem to care. Like they don't seem to experience the penalties that K-12 public schools do. And honestly, Jim, like, y'all are about to have some grandkids. I've got two granddaughters, and I don't want my granddaughters studying for standardized tests and trying to learn how to sit still for 4 hours.
Nope.
And I don't want that for them. And I don't want an education where so I got this great analogy and I got it from ChatGPT. So Rich and I were having this conversation. We were trying to come up with what is the best analogy for not letting kids use this technology. And we played around with all these different ideas. Went to ChatGPT. I uploaded our conversation. I love this strategy of recording a conversation and then putting the transcript into the tool. Love it. I use it
Jim
almost every day.
We do it all the time too.
Oh my gosh, it's so transformative. And so we did that, and I asked ChatGPT, what is the best analogy for this? And it said the best analogy for this is a car. You're not going to let children drive the car, but you're also not going to make them walk until they turn 18. So you're going to let them ride in the car. You're going to give them driver's ed. You're going to talk about driving. You're going to talk about road safety. You're going to teach throughout their whole lives. They're going to be experiencing cars. And then eventually, when they're ready, they're going to get behind the wheel with some guidance, with a learner's permit. Yeah. And then after that, they're going to be able to drive on their own because if we live in Texas, you better learn how to drive. You don't know how to drive, you can't get a job. I mean, you can't do anything except get hit by a car. Like even in my neighborhood, you'd be risking your life to walk around.
That's true.
That's a really good analogy.
Isn't it? I thought it was so brilliant. So I don't want my granddaughters going to a school where where we're not doing realistic things. It doesn't make sense.
So Maurie and I lived in Florida. Hold on, Maurie. So Maurie and I lived in Florida. And in Florida, it was a well-known fact And I was working in the private sector at the time, so Maurie, I get this secondhand through Maurie. But you would send your kids to public schools until when, Maurie?
Junior high. As soon as
When
they
they
went
hit
to
junior
sixth
high,
grade.
you were out. The company I work for, which is a small
Why?
startup, the company I work for was a small startup. The guy that was the CEO literally was on the board of it was a private school. It was a Lutheran church private school, but it was one of the best ones in the area. He got on the board and he offered that as a perk. If you were an employee, he could guarantee that your kid got into that school because the public schools in Florida at the time were rated 49th in the nation. And after elementary
Wow.
school, up to elementary school, they were fantastic. I don't know what the
Well,
hell happened to junior
even
high.
third, fourth, and fifth grade, it started getting a little, but
Dicey.
yeah, it started getting a little dicey. But by then, the elementary schools, they just had a lot more parent involvement, I think.
Yeah. A
And
lot
I
more
think that
support.
a lot more
Mhm.
support. And I think they just had so many kids they were trying to funnel into one junior high school. So, like, our elementary school had 1,000 kids in it. But whenever they got to junior high, you're talking 4,000
Okay,
kids.
so it got too
It,
big, and that's a
it,
huge problem with
it
public
is.
schools.
It is.
Huge
It's way,
problem.
way
The
too big.
school
Yep.
right down the street from us, where my kids both attended, our daughter went to the academy, which was like a little school within a school. Our son couldn't care less about school. I mean, he likes to work with his hands. He's a machinist now, and he went to the same school. When by the time he got there, I want to say there were 4,300 students attending that one high school, and that was just 10th,
Wow.
11th, and 12th grade,
That is
because ninth
big.
grade is a
Man,
separate school.
holy
It's
cow.
so, oh my God, it's huge. It's
That is
absolutely
huge.
huge. Like nobody knows your name. Well,
Yeah.
in this age of AI, that's not going to work anymore.
Mm-mm.
We need human relationships. We
It's more
need
important than
them.
ever. It's more important.
It's
I agree.
it's more important than ever.
There
I
was
agree.
a politician the other day. I loved his quote. He actually said, somebody asked him, "Are you going to apply the same rules?" This is a Texas politician. Are you going to apply the same rules for testing and all the other stuff that you apply to public schools to private schools, the ones you get vouchers and stuff for? He goes, "Why would you do that?" He said, "The whole
Right.
point of these was to experiment with something other than." So I'm sitting there going, "You hypocrite. You literally just said that you thought it was
I'm going to
better to not
experiment
apply
on
those."
other people's children.
You really thought it was a good idea to apply a different set of rules to public schools that were stricter and then allow these private schools to do what they want, which
Well, you
means,
can't control it anyway. Even if you wanted to, you couldn't. I mean, if they're not getting, but the thing is, the way that it's going to be broken in this state is that the parents are going to get the money, not the school. And that's
mhm,
how schools are going to evade all consequences for anything they do. So it's going to be all bets are off, and it's going to be problematic because we're rare parents. We know what school
Oh,
should
yeah,
be like.
absolutely.
Most people
So
have no idea.
I have access. I get an email every single time a student withdraws from our district. And there's a code on every email that I get. And a lot of them now, the code is homeschool, homeschool,
Hmm.
homeschool. I mean, that's all they are.
because you got
I
AI.
think, and well, I was just talking to someone about this the other day at our admin meeting. Actually, we were having this conversation. Um, the voucher program that is there right now, they're only going to allow $2,000 for people who are wanting to homeschool. People are hearing that $2,000 and they're going, oh, well, I'm going to homeschool. So they're going to go ahead and pull their kid out. Well, what it is it's $2,000 that gets to go into a school savings account, like an educational savings account. So it has to be used for tuition, books, tutoring.
But they think they're going to get the check.
So they're thinking at this point they're going to get the check. So they're going to pull their kid out. They're going to homeschool for about 6 months until they realize that they don't really have access to that money. And then they're going to put their kids back into public school.
Now
And we're
they've
going to
missed
have
6 months of the school year.
a
Yes.
And you're going to
6-month
be
lag.
penalized for their whatever scores they end up
Right.
making.
There
And
you go.
so every change just makes public education look like more and more of a failure, even
Yep.
though we have control over like 10% of one aspect of that child's life.
hmm
Anybody who looks at test scores and thinks that test scores have to do with the quality of a school doesn't understand the correlation between poverty and test scores.
Yep.
Look it up.
Yep.
Test scores do the very best at measuring poverty. They're not good at measuring anything else.
There is a famous book called Up the Down Staircase. I think so it was called, Up the Down Staircase, and it's about poverty and education. It's a really good book I had to read when I was getting my master's. Anyway, we are going to run out of time.
Okay, one more
Wow.
question. One more question. Got to ask
Okay.
one.
Okay, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Oh,
No,
me.
I want.
Okay.
I'm going to let you
I was
ask one
like,
more because
well, hell, I'm getting to ask a question. No, I'm
you.
just
That's
joking.
right.
I'm
We're going to
just
get you
joking. I
back
got
on.
to ask several. Okay, so we've been talking about artificial intelligence, talking about K-12 education. So I have to ask if you had one piece of advice that you were going to give to a district or a school leader that's looking at, AI adoption, they're hesitant about it. What are you going to tell them? Other than hire somebody and have somebody come in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hire us.
Hire
That's
us.
my advice. No.
There you go.
I I want people to understand. So you guys know I wrote Beyond Worksheets before I really understood this technology.
Yes.
But it turns out it's really quite interesting because the advice that I gave in that book, and it's a whole book of really trying to convince people that student centered education is so important. It's the most important thing that we can do. So meeting your students where they're at with assignments that are meaningful to them, teaching them to work together with other people, taking the focus off the teacher and putting it back on the student. Is perfect advice, I think, for this age that we're living in. It
Mhm.
really is still the most important advice I can give anybody. But the thing is this doesn't mean that there's less work to do in this area. There's the same amount of work as we've ever had to do because we never made this transition. Like this transition, we tried to start making 10, 15 years ago toward a student centered classroom, but it didn't happen because there's too much work for teachers. And this work is makes the teachers work harder. So moving to student centered is harder in a lot of ways. Now it's easier in some ways too because classroom management changes. And that's the number one problem I hear from teachers is that classroom management is giving them such fits. They can't do anything else. And it's really where the biggest point of misery is.
Mhm.
But turning your classroom into a student centered classroom through the use of AI is now possible. And this is how we can pivot those assignments. And I wish that there was a fast, easy way to explain this to people so that they could really understand quickly. That's what takes some time. And that's what we have to do the work on is that administrators have to understand and teachers have to understand what this technology means for the world we live in. Why, how does it impact our field of education? And then how do we change? How do we pivot those assignments so that they remain meaningful? And that's hard work. So
Mhm.
it's this philosophical change we have to make, and then we have to actually practice doing the work. And I mean it's always been a giant problem in education that we know there are these enormous problems and we're like, okay, well we only have 1 hour. And it's like, okay, well you can do this in 1 hour a week. By the end
Right.
of the school year, you would really make some progress.
Right.
You can do it like that, but you can't just send people to a session for 1 hour about AI and they learn about some, I heard so much about brisk last week, and I love that the teachers in Waxahachie were calling it brisket. Get it?
Yeah, I do get it. That's good,
I
actually.
I know.
I have a brisk T-shirt that they gave me when we were in San Diego. So yeah, I
What a
wear.
profound tool, but we can't just go to a brisk session and call it a day. Like,
Right.
It's
Right.
interesting because you and I talk a lot about how, which is relevant to what you were just talking about. We talk a lot about the kinds of technology that people are pushing so hard to sell into schools, but even before AI. And a big one, it's everything is oriented around lecture mode, which is
yes.
teacher focused. The biggest thing, I can't hardly buy a non-interactive panel to put in a classroom. Maury and
Yeah,
I are
you
all,
can. It's called a TV.
we
And it,
try to. They don't want to sell us TVs.
they
They're so.
don't.
If we ask for a quote for a TV, just a
Have
TV
you been
from
to
most
Sam's
vendors,
Club lately? Can
we
you
bought
buy
it
from
from
Sam's?
Amazon. We bought the last one from Amazon because
Oh,
the normal vendors that we use are like, okay, we just want a TV, and they're like, what?
huh?
A TV? TV? We
Yeah.
want
Because
we want a 70.
actually nobody goes up there and touches those touch panels, and
And
that
they're
costs
like,
like 3,000 extra dollars per device.
Maury sent out a request for quote to two or three different vendors for a TV, They all sent back an interactive panel. They called. They were confused. They didn't even understand what she was asking.
Right.
Right.
It's like, we're
And
moving
this is
toward
all marketing. This is all,
absolutely
it's
marketing.
100% marketing. So that's the other message though, Jim, that you're bringing up right now is we got to get in front of every educational leader we can who's making purchasing decisions and tell them, don't believe these vendors who are coming to your door telling you they can solve this problem at the end of the learning cycle by detecting
Oh.
student AI use. It is not possible. It cannot happen like they tell you it can. It's easily overcome. It far over identifies and gives false positives. And
Mhm.
Maurie, I know you've been a school administrator. Do you want to be on the other side of that lawsuit? Because
I
I
do
don't.
not. I do
I
not.
don't.
No, I not just that. I don't even want to be the one to make the phone call to the parent. It's
No.
like because
I
immediately
have
they're
to
going to
tell you,
come
I don't
back.
think I would do it.
Yeah.
I really
Well,
don't.
it's like when Jim and I go out and do professional development, I'm always saying, have your ducks in a row. Cheating and AI is a thing, but it is a process. It is not a one tool that's going to catch a kid cheating. It's
Right.
a
And so
process.
don't give
And
them your money.
don't give them
Mhm.
your money. And the best way to start the process is exactly what you just said. Have the assignment that is not cheatable, a
Right. Or
non-cheatable.
I either have to not be able to cheat
Mhm.
or I have to not want to.
Right.
Those are the two
Oh,
things.
well, let's talk about that on another podcast because
Yeah.
why do kids cheat? Look at
Because
the
they think the
why,
grade is more
not the
important than the
how.
learning.
Yep. Yep,
And that's why.
exactly.
It is,
So,
because if you don't get the grade, you can't. I mean, the way the system's set up, the grade is more important than the learning. I
it
mean,
is.
they say it's all about the learning, but if you don't make the grades, our daughter was salutatorian by 100th of a point. She made
Oh,
1B in one class 1 year, and
Like
she
her
was
sophomore
literally
year.
the
Yeah.
difference between salutatorian and valedictorian in Texas is your entire freshman year tuition
yes.
gets paid for.
Paid for.
So she lost out
Oh
on
my God, that's a
$20,000
heartbreaker.
for 100th of a point.
It was an absolute stupid thing. She ended up with an 89 because of a test that he gave the wrong test, and it
Oh,
wasn't over any of the material,
oh my
and that
gosh.
they had already covered. But anyway,
And what did she say to the teacher? He said,
said,
grades don't matter. You
yeah.
shouldn't care if you make a B. She said, if grades don't matter to you, they do to me. So just give me an A.
That's a
And
good
And
response.
that's probably why she got
that's
a B.
probably why she got the 89,
Probably
because
Yeah,
so, but it was still a
probably.
good response.
it was
It
a
was
good
a very
response.
good
It cost her
response.
$20,000, but it was a good response.
All right, so we are out of time. We're actually over time. So, Amy, thank you so much for being on our podcast. I really appreciate it.
Thank you
Hopefully,
guys.
you have shared some great words of wisdom. My name is Maurie, and I'm here with my husband Jim, and we are AI in Action, AI education professionals. Thank y'all very much for tuning in, and we hope that you have a marvelous rest of the week.
I've got another video I'm going to